one of my clients didn't pay me a significant amount of money, and then I basically was like lost my business. I was addicted to cocaine pretty badly at that time, and then I got arrested for having a large quantity of cocaine on me. So I had that going on, and...
Did you have to do any time in jail through that arrest?
No. Funnily enough, I didn't have anything happen to me because, like, after I was arrested, I, like, totally turned my life around. Like, I started going to AA, like, you know, every single day for 90, they call it 90 or whatever.
Yeah. Welcome to Elroy Productions Podcast. I have my friend Wesley here. He drove all the way down from Canada, Vancouver. How you doing, man? Welcome.
I'm good. Looking forward to this conversation.
Yeah, me too, man. Was it a long drive down here? Pretty easy traffic?
A little bit of traffic coming in just at the last little bit there, where all those express lanes are, but it wasn't too bad.
That's
I mean,
good.
I'm from a major metropolis, so it's nothing I'm not used to.
Right, that makes sense.
Yeah.
And then you come down here pretty often to go to Grey City every once in a while, and you also said you live stream some of it from home, right?
Yeah, well, no, I live stream church every Sunday, and then so I was in Wenatchee in January, and I was just in Wenatchee last weekend for the Stronger Man's Conference.
That's
that
cool.
They put on every year, so
How was that?
it was awesome. Like, I don't have a lot of people in my life that I get to talk to Jesus or talk about Jesus with, so
Yeah.
like having like a never-ending supply of Christians coming up to me and wanting to talk about my faith was nice, because like, yeah, my scope of that is fairly limited, because even in Canada, especially in my province, the amount of people who are Christians are fairly limited, and then on top of that, the ones that are kind of that new not Christians, where they
Right.
don't really follow scripture, and
They
don't,
go to
yeah.
church, and that's about all
Well,
they do.
they have rainbow flags on their walkways and whatever else, and that's not. I mean, I'm not the person who's doing the judging, but it's just biblically speaking not in alignment with where I see things. So
Correct, yeah.
Yeah.
It's about the walk with God, not about
yeah,
the religion itself. It's about your actual relationship with Jesus.
Yeah.
So
I'm heavily focused on my relationship with Jesus. It's like the first thing I do every single day is I wake up and I pray, and then I read my Bible before I get going and doing anything else. So
it's good, man.
get spiritually centered, and
It's a good start for your day,
yeah.
right?
Mm-hmm.
So I feel super lucky too, having Chris introduce us. It's
Yeah.
super random. Someone dropped out and I wasn't able to have the spot filled, so I randomly hit you up and you were like, yeah, man, I'll be there.
Yeah.
So it was just super crazy how you're able to just kind of just come down. You know,
Yeah.
it's almost unheard of for me to have someone just drive from Canada and just be like, yeah, I'm about it.
Well, if one of my spiritual leaders from Grey City asked me to do something, then I mean they've gone out of their way for me, so
Yeah.
I'll do the same. It's all for, and especially anything that's gonna help potentially bring somebody else into the kingdom.
Yeah,
You know,
that's
so-
amazing, man. So, again, thank you for being here. I would love to hear a little bit more about your story. I know you sent me a little bit of it, but I personally haven't even heard your full extent of your story. I know a couple different details and little tiny ones, but I'd love to kind of hear where you were, you know, before the faith, before you found Jesus, how you found Jesus, and kind of what you're doing now in your walk with God.
Okay, well, I mean, like, I don't know how far you want me to go back. Like when I was a child, I was kind of like really sensitive and didn't really know, wasn't really sure of myself, didn't get a lot of positive reinforcement, kind of was like a weird kind of artsy kid that didn't, really fit in with anybody. And then so I kind of struggled through the first phase of school, and then once I got into high school, I became like a fairly negative energy inside of me, putting out, almost like I was putting out energy so I wouldn't be receiving it, so like instead of being
Kind of the deflection tactic for
yeah,
yourself.
so instead of being the nail, I wanted to be the hammer. And then so I was leading a fairly negative lifestyle all the way through. Like that started when I was 13, and then partying and everything came in, and the never-ending pursuit of women and all the negative things that you get wrapped up in, and that carried all the way through my 30 or to my 20s. When I turned 30, all of that, the stuff that I had spoken to you about kind of happened all at once. Like my business, we didn't get paid a fairly large sum of money.
What kind of business were you in?
I had a contracting business.
Okay.
And one of my clients didn't pay me a significant amount of money, and then I basically was like lost my business. I was addicted to cocaine pretty badly at that time, and then I got arrested for having a large quantity of cocaine on me. So I had that going on. And
did you have to do any time in jail through that arrest? Or?
Funnily enough, I didn't have anything happen to me, because like after I was arrested, I like totally turned my life around. Like I started going to AA, like every single day for 90. They call it 90 and 90 or whatever.
Yeah.
So I did the 90 and 90, and by the time I had gotten to court, I had like 3 years clean. I did a bunch of volunteer work at like rehab centers and stuff like that. So they just basically did this thing called a discharge. I know you guys don't have those here, but basically I was like, went from looking at, because initially when I got arrested, there was like a 2-year mandatory minimum sentence, right, for having that quantity of drugs on you. And then funnily enough, Justin Trudeau got elected, and he changed those laws. Like that was like one of the very first things he did.
You got lucky there.
Yeah.
You got blessed.
And then it's so ironic how I feel about him now, but and then so I got, like, everything got settled, but I need to go back, because I was sitting at my table, and this is like my very first spiritual experience, and at the time I didn't even realize that it was anything to do with Jesus, because I was a total atheist. I was, I couldn't put my finger on what exactly happened, but I was sitting at my kitchen table alone, like contemplating suicide, and I felt like this energy enter my body, and then like a voice in my head direct me to draw. And so I like grabbed a piece of paper and I started drawing at who I thought it was in my head. I started drawing my best friend who died, and that's him on my forearm there.
Wow.
But that was my very first drawing, and I hadn't drawn since I was in like elementary school or something like that, probably at the time. So
was it a pretty good drawing that you drew?
Well, I actually can show you when we're done on my phone, but it's like the difference between what I drew then and what I'm doing now is like, it's like mind blowing, really.
Yeah.
And that was like my very first step towards healing, and because it gave me something that I could pursue that was positive, other than like drugs and women, right? So I stopped going out, and I really started focusing on that, and I got linked up with this girl who I thought I was going to end up getting married to, but that's another story. And I like completely altered my life. And the way that I look at that situation is, I think like Jesus, that was like, he knew that I needed something to do to like get me on that path where I would potentially accept him into my life. And I say kind of renovated my kitchen. Yeah. And then decided he needed to come back later and strip me down to the foundation. Yeah. So 7 years, or immediately after my court thing was settled, I got hit by a car at a intersection, blew my disc and my hip labrum. So that was.
You were just crossing the street?
No, I was sitting at a light, and I got like this Jeep just didn't stop. Didn't notice the light had changed.
Oh wow!
And he just plowed into me when I was sitting at a light.
Wow, just rear-ended.
Yeah, and so I had back surgery. Luckily, I avoided hip surgery, but it was like a super long, drawn-out rehab situation.
How long was the situation?
6 years it took to get through that ordeal, and that was like halfway through it was COVID starting. Okay, so this is like the final ramp up to my actual like encounter with Jesus and like my decision to become a Christian. So COVID started. I knew like immediately that everything didn't line up. Like everything was screaming to me like something's not right. So I was like starting to do research and figuring things out. And then I was actively like trying to convey these things to people in my life. And because like it's me versus a $1 trillion propaganda machine, like I was like getting my butt kicked, and it ostracized me like majorly from family and friends, so much so that I ended up, well, my girl left me, and then about 2 months after that, my family uninvited me to my sister's wedding because I refused to get the vaccine, and I was being very aggressively vocal about how the new laws and everything were totalitarian and we're walking down this super bad path anyways. So there was major consternation between me and my family. And then I was basically at home, like thinking about everything that had gone on, and I was having like this like nervous breakdown. And it's funny that both these times where I was feeling like my life was completely falling apart, he shows up for me again. And this time it's like much more, like it was like kind of like I felt something the first time, but this was like a full on, like I felt him like enter me, and it was like a reel in my mind of all of the times that I almost died.
Wow.
And that he was there looking, like watching me and protecting me. And it was like all the love that I had felt like I had been missing my whole life, like kind of rushed into me like all at once. Like I was thinking, like, even though I didn't believe him, even though I mocked Christians, even though I'd done terrible things, he loved me more than anybody else. And that just like
he still saw
was
you
such an emotional moment for me. Like I cried and I cried. I was crying, like I was like emotionally like messed up for, I want to say, like almost a full month. Like I was really, because just absorbing everything that happened.
Yeah, it's a lot. It's heavy.
And then coming out on the other side of it, still not having a relationship with my family or anybody else. Like I was pretty much alone. And then it was like, okay, now what, right? And it took me a while, but it just like, the more I observed and the more I could see like that society was trying to like actively push people away from Jesus. And then I was really kind of frustrated that I didn't see it before, that it was just like that. They don't do that with any other religion, just with Christ.
They push so hard against it.
It just became more and more evident to me, like that this is like, I actually physically felt him. I saw him on my mind, and that I knew he was real all of a sudden. And then all of that stuff really started to make a lot more sense to me.
How did you feel coming from an atheist standpoint to the Christianity standpoint? It's got to have felt kind of crazy in your head.
Yeah, nobody is more shocked that this ended up being where I am than me.
Right.
I was like full on, living for the flesh, right? Like that was I didn't care about anything else. It was like,
you weren't looking for it.
Notches on my belt and craziest party stories I could come up, like getting myself into all these kind of crazy situations. And then that was like another thing that I had to go through, was like the guilt processing all that, right? Like
what you've done.
And then also then trying to like accept that he was going to forgive me for that, because it didn't make any sense to me. Like all these concepts are totally, because you don't get that kind of love from anybody, not your family, friends. Like the fact that he could see my inner thoughts, all the worst things I'd ever done in my life, and then still be there for me within that moment where I was like, I was alone. So
just give you the eternal love that you thought you never deserved.
Exactly. And then I cry about thinking about that all the time.
Yeah,
like,
man.
It like, it just like all of a sudden just like start like tearing up, and like people looking at me like, what's going on with this dude with his beard? It's Jesus. And
it's true though. I mean, God just shows up, man, and you feel it. When you feel it, you feel it, and you almost kind of see all your sins like going up on the cross and just getting bled over, because for the things that people do. I mean, I'm sure that you did. I'm sure that I did. Like, it's crazy, man, to like think like half the people you would tell the stuff that you've done, they would run away and never come back and talk to you. But Jesus is there and he's going to love you forever.
Yeah. So then it was mainly like, hey, well, what do I do now, right? And then so the first thing I can think of is, okay, well, if I'm going to be a Christian, I need to read the Bible.
Yeah.
So I went and got a Bible, and I started reading it I basically made the decision, okay, I'm going to read 4 pages a day, every day until I finish it. So I started reading it at the beginning of July last year, and I finished the Old Testament on the last day of November, which is crazy. Did not like try to line that up or anything. Just It worked out that I finished it in November, and then
that's crazy.
Read the New Testament through to December, and then finished it on the 7th day of January. And then the next weekend I was in Wenatchee getting baptized. So
wow, that's amazing.
Yeah.
And how is it that you found Grace City?
That's just more God's hand, because like I was, because I'm a libertarian, and he like provided, because like I was really incensed with the behavior of the church in Canada, and I didn't really feel connected to the church.
Yeah.
I had my relationship, like, because that's why I always say relationship over anything, right? So as long as I'm working on my personal relationship, then everything will be fine. But it just, Josh McPherson just started appearing in my algorithm on Instagram, and then I started researching him, and they went to court with the governor over their COVID policy, and I was like, these guys are like me, right? Like they're gonna get me. And then I can't remember how it ended up happening, but I was reaching out to them, and then we just ended up planning my baptism. Like, okay, well, I want to finish the Bible. Here's like when I think I'm going to be done. And then, when can you guys fit me in? And it just like worked out where I was like, finish the Bible. Next week, I'm getting dunked with my brothers in Christ in Wenatchee.
That's amazing.
Yeah.
What was it that inspired you to get baptized? Was it just because of the teachings that you've read? Or was it just something in you that was like, hey, I need to do this?
Well, it's just like I said, like when I made the decision that I was going to be a Christian, I knew that becoming a Christian, you need to get baptized. I mean, Jesus himself was baptized, so
yeah.
I wish I could get baptized in the Jordan, but I mean, that's quite the trip.
Get a plane ticket.
Yeah. So I knew that the first, like, if I was going to be a Christian, I wanted to be a real Christian. And wasn't going to be like this person who just says, oh, I'm a Christian, and I'm not actively pursuing the faith. So like, that's why I'm like so committed to reading scripture. And so I did that, and then I wanted to make sure that I had read the whole Bible and I fully kind of understood everything that it said before I like did the final thing where you're like, okay, now I'm dunked. And
public declaration of your faith.
Exactly.
So how do you feel looking back at yourself now? Obviously you said you're kind of like more surprised. You're the person who's gonna be the most surprised, but how do you feel now, kind of like looking back and being like, dude, like I was an atheist, I had this crazy path, I'm following Jesus now?
Well, honestly, the way that I look at it is like God was preparing me for whatever thing he needs me to do.
Yeah.
And the way that I feel now is it's like a huge relief, because like I don't have to work. Like I worry so much less about where I'm going or what's going to happen to me or whatever, because I just having that reassurance that God was there for me in my darkest moments. Like he's obviously directing me towards something, and I'm not exactly sure what it is, but I'm just like kind of like letting go and just like accepting it. It's a huge, like, it's like stripping a huge layer of like worry and anxiety and all those things like out of your soul, like immediately, like once you realize like that he's real and he's like taking an active role in your life, right? So
I feel like a lot of it too is, like something you were to stress about, right? Like if something for your job wasn't going well, the next, like now all of a sudden you can be like, okay, I'm going to let it, God have that. I'm going to pray on it, and there's nothing I can do about it. You know, you can actively pursue options because you're not supposed to just sit there and like have God just like drop something in on a hot air balloon for you. Yeah. But you still got to do the work. But it's like giving up that power aspect of it and just saying, God, like you help me, right? And instead of going to bed just stressing about it, you say, hey, God has this now. And I think that could be a big part of the like stress getting ripped off of your life, or just the worry.
Yeah, well, like that's the thing too, is like God provided the one thing that he, like painting, for instance, like he knew I needed something to make me feel like I had value, and then also the something that I was going to need to, or that I would need to pursue and put a lot of work into, and then that would, you know, develop like more confidence and more value within me as a person. And yeah, I couldn't even tell you how many hours I've spent painting since I started, but it's like a lot. And
tell me a little bit more about it though. What kind of stuff do you paint? Because I've seen some of the stuff, I think, on your Instagram, and we'll probably post some stuff up there for the viewer to see. But I'm curious to see what kind of or to hear about what kind of stuff you like to paint.
Well, initially, because I'm like such a huge music fan, like it was like basically I would be listening to a song and I would like get a vision in my head, and then I would just like end up like compiling a bunch of images together to make that new image that I wanted to paint, and then paint it. So, but I'm kind of growing, like, and then also I like to make people gifts. So I give away a lot of art. So I switch back and forth between doing pieces for my collection, which I'm like saving up because I want to do have a show or something at some point.
That's super cool.
And then I make like in between each one of those larger paintings, I typically make like a one or a few gift paintings for people, because like I always thought like getting painted would be like a super cool thing to have happen to me, and I like to kind of like do that for people. So, or I make them something that was dear to them that they lost or whatever. So
wow,
that's like, because that was like such a art was such a the way it came to me was such a random gift. So I like to try to like forward that as much as I can.
Yeah.
If that makes sense.
Is that what you do now predominantly then? Is just, kind of paint for people to...
That's like my passion. I'm more like right now I study economics, so that's kind of like where I'm going as far as like financial... If I end up becoming like a financially successful painter at some point, then that's fine. If not, then whatever. Yeah. It's something that I just enjoy doing. So
that's awesome, man. I saw that one picture you did of Jesus. That one was really, really cool.
Yeah.
Yeah. How long?
Yeah, that one actually, I'm super proud of that, and it was such a struggle, because the first, like, I finished it and I was like, okay, I'm gonna coat these in epoxy, and I'd never really done that before.
Yeah.
And the first two that I did went really well, and then the third one I did and the epoxy failed, and that was the Jesus painting.
Oh no.
So I had like this huge spiritual crisis for 4 days, like trying to figure out, because it was not curing. Like it was like soft and sticky.
Oh no.
And I thought I ruined the painting, and I was like going to be in Wenatchee, like presenting this painting to the church like the next...
How did it work out?
Well, basically, like I had like 4 days where I was basically destroyed spiritually, and I was like praying and praying and praying, like trying to see if God was mad at me, and then it just ended up like, no, this is just like, I came to the conclusion that no, this is a trial that God has put in front of me to figure this out. And
yeah,
I ended up like watching a bunch of YouTube videos on how to fix stuff like that. Figured it out. Like, you can see there's an imperfection in the pour and the resin. I can see it. Most people wouldn't notice it.
Most people couldn't even care.
And it's just like, that's the way that it's a perfect representation of me, because it's like, it's really good, but it's not perfect.
You know what I mean? Exactly, like, right? Like, I do a really good job, but I'll never be perfect, unfortunately.
Yeah, so, and that, I think that was a good lesson that I was taught there, and I struggled through it, and then it ended up being like everything that I wanted it to be, because like when I gave it to the church, they just like they loved it so much, and I could see it in their face how much joy it brought to them. So like, it made me feel really good, and that's all I really, because it was me expressing gratitude to the church for what they've done for me. So
that's amazing, man. It's funny to me that I can understand the church that you're talking about, because I haven't been around the faith very long, but I had Christian parents growing up. Yeah. Right? And Pastor Josh McPherson, I was at that church, Grace City Church, back when it was called Grace Covenant Church. Yeah. And I grew up around, Pastor Adam, Pastor Kent, Josh McPherson. Yeah. My parents, I think, were there before it was still under 100 people. Wow. I think it was like 45 people. Yeah. And we were meeting up in a little barn in like little area shack in Kashmir. Yeah. And then it kind of grew to a different church, and then grew to a different church. We were used at this, I think we were at a Seventh-day Adventist church at one point, because they don't use them on Sundays, right? So we could use it there, and it just kept growing. And I haven't actually been to the new one yet, but I've heard a lot about it, and it seems really cool. But every time my parents were like, you should come to church with us, I was like, no. Yeah. I'm not going with you guys. And in fact, my parents gave me one time, I could move in with my parents, but one of their ultimatums was I needed to go to church with them. And I told them no, I wasn't going to move in, because it just wasn't worth it to me to go to church. But it's cool, because like I can totally understand who you're talking about. Yeah. Like, I know who Josh is. I know who Adam, Kent. Like I went to Kent's Super Bowl parties. Oh, nice. Right in his garage. He used to have like his big flat screen, right? Yeah. They just project the Super Bowl. We'd have fun games for all the ads and stuff like that. He's a good dude, man. Yeah, good people that you're around.
They've been such a blessing in my life. Like I can't.
And they're men too. Yeah, they're all about being a man.
Yeah, exactly. That's what I like. One of the things that I really appreciate about that church is it's like not afraid. Like they're unabashedly masculine. Everybody's got a big beard. We're all wearing flannel. Yeah. Like it's like, and then we just did the men's conference, so that was great. And it's, there is something to say about being with a bunch of God-fearing men and paying respect to the Lord. Like I felt way more comfortable doing worship and like having my hands up in the air and everything when it was just the dudes there. It was cool. Like I had a lot of fun and met a lot of great people. But yeah, those guys are doing amazing work, bringing people to the Lord. Like the fact that they got me down there from an atheist from Vancouver, right? And I'm down there getting baptized. Like it's crazy. It's a miracle.
And God works in so many ways, and it's funny because I know they're the type of people too to not ever be like, yeah, we got this guy down here, Wesley. We got him baptized. We got him saved. Like I know they're sitting down here saying, man, God is so powerful. Yeah. Thank you so much for using me. Yeah. Because I know they know this too, and it's like, it's nothing I could have done that you could have done. It was God just kind of showing up and being like, hey, you have a couple choices here. One, you can keep living the life that you're living now, or two, you could choose me and have a great life, and you're still going to be bad sometimes. You're still going to go through life because it's a broken world, but at the end of the day, you got to go to bed with me. You got to sleep and wake up knowing that you're a follower of me, and I will take care of you.
The biggest thing for me, the biggest change for me is just like how I, like when I do something that I know is wrong, it's like I actually feel it. Yep. You know what I mean? Yeah. Like I feel it, and it's everything from like just cursing when I'm driving. So I'm like I can feel like almost like when you did something, you get caught doing something, you swear in traffic because you lost your temper, and it's and then I have to repent for the next 10, 15 minutes or whatever.
And it's funny too, because like you might swear in traffic, and a certain walk of your life when you're following Jesus, you might not even feel like the criticism for it. Not even necessarily criticism, just the like, hey, you probably shouldn't do that type of feeling. But you could be doing something else, like you end up going like watching porn or something like that, and you do it and you're just like, man, like I can't believe I did it again. Like this is horrible, right? Because I struggle with that too, and it's one of those things that as a man you're always going to struggle with the lust of women, because it's unfortunately just a big part of our lives, and it's so presentable anywhere you go. Like you go to the gym, you go online, you go to Instagram, you go to Snapchat, you go here, you go there, you go there. It's just everywhere, bro. Yeah. So like that's a huge one where you'll just instantly feel guilt. But I know for me too, like I'm a restaurant manager, and it's hard sometimes. I'll be doing my shift and I'm like, man, I said 3 cuss words today, but then I'm like, wait a minute, I used to say like 500. I would insert the S word anywhere possible because it didn't even make sense. Some of the stuff that you would say is just like, why? is that? It's not even proper English. Like, what are you doing? So God will put on different things in your heart at different periods of your life too, and with your walk with him, and we get to work on those things with him, you know, because he is your dad, and he's not going to be like, hey, you did this today, you got 2 more options or 2 more chances and you're kicked out, you know. He's like, hey, I feel like as long as you feel that guilt too, you know, that's how you know you're really like tracking with God. Because I told someone the other day, I was like, I never used to watch porn and then feel really bad after. I'd be like, man, I can't believe I did that. But like now it's like you're just sitting there like, man, what have I done? You know. So I mean, that's good that you feel that though, because I mean, otherwise.
Yeah, like lust was one of the first things that I really tried to conquer. Like I have not been in like ever since I broke up with or my ex and I broke up, I have not like been pursuing a new relationship, because basically the decision that I made was like, I want to be in a relationship where I'm going to get married to a Christian woman and have like a real relationship, and not like this like modern style marriage where it's like until you get tired of each other and walk away, right? Like I wanted to be praying with my wife, and like I needed to become the man that could have that kind of relationship. So that was going to take time. So I took a step back. I'm still like not pursuing anybody. So it's like I'm really focusing on figuring myself out and my relationship with him. And then I just figure like whenever I'm ready, then God will present that to me. So
yeah, which is really good, because if you try to push anything again, it's going to turn into the same thing it was before, and you're going to end up slipping up, or something's going to happen, you're going to regret it, and it's going to be a lot more work, I feel like, once you slip up to bring that relationship back to where it needed to be with God. But
yeah, I don't want, like, that's the thing is like that's my top priority. So until he decides that it's time, then it's not time yet. So
what kind of stuff are you doing now? You know, I mean, you have your day-to-day. You said you don't have a lot of people that you can talk to about Jesus, but what do you do now to keep yourself kind of centered around your walk with him, and just making sure that you're doing everything for yourself?
Well, I mean, like, I'm studying to become like an economic analyst, so I spend a lot of time reading charts, but like the way that I keep my head in the game is like obviously, like I said, like there's a lot of prayer, a lot of reflecting, meditation, and then I also like I'm reading scripture like all the time. And then also I also like to watch guys debate online about religious stuff. So
that's cool. Keeps you sharp.
Yeah, I want to be able to really know things so well that I can kind of like talk to anybody about it and like have all the salient points that I need to defend my positions, right? So like I'm not sleeping on this stuff. Like I watch debates between Muslims and Christians, and then like different positions in Christianity, like Catholicism, all that type of stuff, and Orthodoxy, and
it's good.
Where I agree with them, where I don't agree with them, and then just like having like as deep an understanding about my faith as humanly possible, right? Because I feel like I am a little bit obsessive with stuff, with like when I get like into stuff. Yeah. So it's like I spend a lot of my time trying to understand things, because like I feel like I'm so far behind, right? So
you want to know what you're talking about when you're doing something. It's like a job. If you don't know what you're talking about while you're doing it, you're gonna someone's gonna ask you about it.
Well, it's also just like I just want to be able to explain myself too, because it's like for people who aren't Christian, and I want everybody to find their way to God. So being able to project what it means to be like a good Christian, and then also like be able to like explain things to somebody who has questions.
Yeah. What do you think it means for somebody to be a good Christian in your opinion?
Well, the number one thing is obviously faith, that Jesus died on the cross for your sins and was resurrected and went to heaven to be with the Father. That's the main thing. And then walking towards him from wherever position that you are. Yeah. Right? So like if you're doing super dark stuff, then your walk is going to take a lot longer than somebody who isn't. But as long as you're, working towards being with him.
It's actively pursuing the cross, basically.
Yeah. Like that's, to me, is the number one thing, is active pursuit of Jesus, not necessarily where you are in the walk. But
yeah.
trying to find him actively.
Yeah, I like that a lot, man. I think that's super important. I feel like a lot of Christians too can become stale, you know, and it's one of those things where they're like, I believe in God, but I don't pursue God, or I don't have really a relationship with God, you know, and it, you know, just takes it back to relationships, because not only do you want a relationship with him, but he wants a relationship with you.
And it's the same thing with like any other relationship, right? Like you get out of it what you put into it, right? So the way that I'm trying to be with my relationship with him is, like I said, like being proactive and like talking to him regularly. Obviously, my nose in the gospel as much as humanly possible. So those are like the main things that I've found that have really helped me so far in my walk. So
that's awesome, man. Do you find that you have a hard time going out and talking about Jesus to people, or do you find that it's pretty easy when you're just kind of out and about to just talk about it?
Well, I mean, I don't, like, I've pulled myself back from society because I don't really feel like of this world anymore. You know, like I'm kind of separate. But when the opportunity is there, I don't have any problem talking about it, because I'm used to saying things to people that they don't want to hear.
Yeah.
So that, like, I mean, that's like my thing. So I've been challenging people's opinions on things for basically my whole life, and now I'm like, instead of just doing it for whatever reason, I feel like I have more of a, like, that was a gift given to him, or given to me by him.
You think you did it more for the power of your own self versus now you can do it for the power of
exactly.
God, right?
Well, being right. I like being right.
Yeah, right.
That was what it was for before, and now it's like
too about people be like doing things because they like being the person who is right, or like has the power or holds the power, and then you kind of just give it all over to God now, and you have none of the power, but you get to deliver His power. Yeah,
exactly. And like, I like to, like, the message I like to convey the most is like how weak I was before. Like, I have this like tough exterior, it was bad, you know, but deep inside I was like
bad to the bone,
weak-minded, weak-willed.
Yeah.
Even though like on the surface, like, I didn't seem that way because I was like pursuing my own business, doing all these things, but deep down in the core, like, I was weak, and it was all fear, all those things that Satan puts in your mind that kind of like leads you off the path. And I'm constantly having to battle those voices that creep back in, and then get recentered with God, and then walking again, because it is a practice, right? Like, being able to talk that feeling out of yourself with His hand, like, it's crazy how much power it has.
Yeah, and it always happens too when you're the most vulnerable, right? It's like either when you're laying in bed after like a long day, or something bad just happened in your life and you're feeling defeated, or even kind of just like a moment where you haven't filled your day. At least for me, like when I first came to the belief of Jesus, and it was, I filled my time so packed full all the time. I was like, I'm either going to a youth group, a men's group, going to Bible study, I'm going to church, I'm going to go praise on a Wednesday, like whatever it was. I was like, I need to fill my life right now, because I had so many bad thoughts and so many bad things in my life. Like, I had people like from my old escorting career like hitting me up to actively like come and like do that, or like people from like asking me like, hey, let's go get like, you know, on drugs, or like let's go get drunk or whatever. And I felt like I need to keep my life so packed full that I don't have any time to do it, you know. And
that was like one thing that I'd already walked away from a lot of that stuff, and that was being in my relationship with my ex, like, really got me going in the right direction, because I was content being home with her. I wasn't trying to pursue other things. Yeah. So that was like I said, like, I feel like Jesus gave me like a small kitchen reno, and then during COVID I got stripped down to the foundation and full rebuild as like a Christian. Yeah,
that's good though. Sometimes you need that, because I mean, if you just get that small kitchen renovation, there's always gonna be that one thing that you're like, I wish we would have paid for that. Yeah, right. We should have paid for that too. Yeah, you know. So
it's been such a great experience for me. I can't even, like, to think that I would be driving down to Washington to talk about God for an hour. Like, that's something I definitely would not have ever imagined myself
Yeah, no,
doing.
absolutely not. It blows my mind that I'm even doing this too. So I'm sure it blows your mind that you're doing this too.
Yeah.
I sat down with my dad the other day and we were doing a podcast a couple weeks ago, and it was crazy because I was talking to him and I was like, man, like the odds that like him and I were going to be sitting together talking about Jesus was like, there's no way, bro. I would have laughed in your face. I'm sure you would probably laugh in someone's face if you said you're going to be on a podcast talking about God, because it just doesn't seem in character, you know, especially if you're challenging people's faith all the time as an atheist. I'm sure you probably did that a lot. I mean, you probably challenged people's faith whenever you could get the option, I would guess, you know.
Well, there's not a lot, like, in my circle, there wasn't a whole lot of religious people. So, like, I actually went to church a few times with friends when I was a kid, because I wanted to see what it was like. And also, when I was in AA, I was pursuing finding God the whole time I was in there. Like, there was saying, like, find your higher power, find your higher power. And I just, it irritated me every time that got brought up, because it's like, didn't matter how hard I tried to find that, it just wasn't there for me. So I was just like, you guys are constantly talking about God and how God's gonna fix my life and all this stuff. It's like, I'm doing it on my own. Like, I'm doing it on my strength. Right.
I found that in AA too, people were like, and I find it funny that you say that, because people in AA were like, find your higher power, and then half the people would be like, my higher power, spiritual being, and then the other half would be like, Jesus, and I'm like, shut up. You know, like, don't talk about that guy, right? That guy's not real. But people who are like, my spiritual banana, you know? And I'm like, wow, that makes sense.
Yeah, the way that they always said, well, your higher power can be like the group. Right. So, like, that's what basically, like, what my mindset was. And for instance, like, like you said, like, anytime Jesus got brought up, like, it was almost like an irritability thing, like, because deep down inside me, I knew that was real, and I was like in denial, because I knew that if that was real, then I was gonna have to change like everything about my life, and I wasn't willing to do that.
We weren't willing to give up the sin.
Exactly.
Yeah. The way they always described it to me was, for a higher power, it couldn't be a person. It had to be something greater than yourself. And I was like, man, there's not much things that are greater than myself. I'm pretty cool, man. You know, and I got sober for 5 years just off my raw strength.
Yeah. Same.
And my parents always told me, and my mom told me recently, she goes, you were a ticking time bomb. Because she's like, you were sober. It's very impressive you did it for 5 years by yourself. But you were a ticking time bomb, because at any point you're going to just blow off the rails, because I was still doing absolutely no good. You know, so it's giving over to Jesus is really the only way to do it.
Well, for longevity, it like takes away the edge.
Yeah.
You know, like, I'm not like, for things that especially for that specific thing, like, you'd be like sitting there like, oh my gosh, like, I really wish I could go get drunk right now. And it's like, that doesn't even cross my mind.
Yeah, it really doesn't cross my mind either, which is crazy.
Like, I have no desire to do that whatsoever.
Yeah, right? You're like, well, I don't think I would be able to hear the Holy Spirit if I was drunk. So maybe not a great idea. So what's a great word of encouragement you would have for somebody who's maybe still on their path with God, still hasn't really necessarily found Jesus, but, you know, could still be living a life where it's, you know, they're like, man, maybe I know this Jesus guy, maybe I don't know this Jesus guy, maybe he's tugged on their heart or planted a seed. But if you have any words of encouragement for someone who's, you know, kind of just walking the path.
Well, I mean, because I had like a really abrupt spiritual experience, it's hard. I have a little bit of a hard time knowing how to explain things to people and that, but like, the number one thing for me would just be to read the book. Like, that, it just opens up your mind to so many things that you can relate to from like what's going on in the world now, and then you can see all this like similar situations playing out in the Bible. And I really feel like having your nose in the gospel, regardless of where you are with your walk towards God, like, that will ultimately bring you closer to Him. And like, every time you read it, like, I just like, I'm a huge Bible proponent. Like, I want any person wants to know my opinion on how to get closer to God, and it's the gospel. Yeah, I agree, man. I think that's super awesome to just kind of stay close to the Word. Yeah. Make sure you do it consistently, and not just when you feel like you need it. Yeah, and thinking, and then also thinking about like what you're reading, and then also like developing your relationship with Him, and that's through prayer and just talking with Him. Even if you don't really feel like He's listening, He is. Yeah. That's my main thing. Like anytime you think he's not there, he is. You just maybe don't have that, like maybe you can't feel it at the time, but like I know for a fact that like even all the times where I didn't think he was there, he was, and he showed me that. So
I think it's also important too that when you're reading, because I mean you could read, and then you could pray, you know, and then you pick up your phone and start texting, right? I think it's important too. If you don't think he's listening, even though he is, taking the time to listen yourself, I think is very important as well, just to make sure that otherwise you're like kind of just shutting it out almost. Like you could be trying to talk to you, but you never took the time to listen yourself. You know?
That's why I always say like contemplation and like thinking about your reading, and then like also thinking about like your relationship with God and like what you want to do with it, right? So like anything you're doing within that like realm where you're in prayer, reading the word, or just like thinking about your relationship with God, those are like, that's like my personal trinity of building my relationship with Jesus.
No, that's awesome, man. Cool. Well, it's a pleasure having you on here, man.
Thank
you. Really good to hear your story.
Yeah.
I'm glad you could come all the way down from Canada and
No
kind
worries.
of get to chop it up a little bit, and it's an absolute pleasure to meet you.
Perfect. Thanks,
Cool,
Blake.
man. Yeah, of course. Welcome back to Elroy Productions Podcast. You guys, will see you next time.